Hello, my name is Andrjez Mazur, and I would like to tell you a little bit about the limitations that spawn creativity. I'm going to talk about the js13kGames competition, which is an online competition running yearly since 2012, where the main challenge is to build an HTML5 game in 13 kilobytes zipped package. So that's quite a challenge. And over the years, we can see that developers are really taking that into account and creating really cool and creative games over the years. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about the past months, especially about the W3C workshop that happened last year, where I was talking about the indie perspective to web games, where I was discussing issues developers are currently having. I was comparing that to how the game development looked like in 2011 versus 2019, and you could we could see that there is a huge difference technology-wise. It was really hard to build games in 2011. It's a lot easier to build them in 2019 and currently in 2020. But the main struggles developers had last year were discoverability and monetization. And interestingly enough, after my talk, I was approached by the Coil folks who told me about the web monetization API, and I got hooked into that pretty quick. I was really excited about the possibilities of web monetization. So 2 months later, we already had web monetization category in the js13kGames competition. People seem to like the concept. We had 48 web monetized entries out of 245, if I remember correctly. And those were really interesting takes on how you can implement web monetization in a game that has to fit in 13 kilobytes. 2 months after that, we were showcasing web monetized games from the competition at the Mozilla Festival in London, where people could see how the web monetization was implemented in the entries from the competition, and really like the concept of monetization within HTML5 games, so they could literally see micro amounts of money flowing to the developers' wallets while they were playing the games. And it was also the time when the grant for the web program was announced, which is a $100 million fund created by Coil and supported by Mozilla and Creative Commons, where content creators of any kind can get grants to fund their work on seeing if they can monetize stuff with web monetization. I was lucky enough to get the grant, which also covered having the js13kGames competition's web monetization category again this year, in which we could see more creativity, more interesting ways of implementing web monetization in HTML5 games. Going through the top 5, it was interesting to see that you could have a platformer where web monetized users would get a practice mode. So you can literally cheat and don't lose at all. So you could just go through the level without stressing that you will instantly die. A game, a hyper casual one where a monetized bonus was that you could buy stuff cheaper. So the gameplay was a little bit easier. An interesting puzzle where a bonus was about having more time to actually solve the puzzles that were coming at you. Pixel art roguelike in which the bonus was added to the game in a way that you could have your crew members on a higher level, but it also meant having a bigger chance of some events that could be bad for the game. Or the game in which it was a platformer, but you had to move from one platform to the other, and you could control the light, which would create shadows on which you could go further. So it was walking on shadows, literally. And cool thing about all the entries from this year, from last year, from over the years, is that we can see so much creativity coming from literally around the world. I think we had like 3 countries out of 200 that we didn't get anyone to participate in the competition. Many developers are coming from United States, but literally the whole world participate in the competition online. And it's nice to see developers from exotic countries, exotic continents, when you think from the US or Europe point of view, and unique and interesting gameplays from that places, which differ from what we can call hyper casual games or browser games in general. So it's really nice to see different diversified perspectives on building HTML5 games from all around the world. And we've noticed that many developers are working full-time as front-end developers or JavaScript programmers, and some of them try to switch to game development or try going full-time with game development. And it's a challenge to help them with that move. There are struggles game developers have with monetizing their games. Current market is a tough one, complicated one. It revolves mostly about implementing adverts in the games. So many developers would like to move to game dev from being a front-end developer full-time, but it's tough. It's not that easy. So how can we help with that? What if monetizing HTML5 games on the web could be done better? The web monetization API might be the answer. The cool thing about web monetization is that compared to SDKs or pieces of code that have to be implemented in the game that are given from publishers to show the adverts, there are always some issues with that. But web monetization works in a way that developers can implement features within their games. It's their own code that is offered as an extra content for monetized users. So you can create an extra level, add cool weapons, bonuses, and points and coins within your own game, which a monetized user will get. The huge benefit is that we can get rid of the adverts. We don't need to worry about privacy issues, spying on our players, selling their data, because all this can be thrown away and replaced with web monetization. And comparing the current status with how classic publishers work, the SDKs I mentioned is a complicated code that you have to implement within your own game to show some adverts, while web monetization, the implementation part is really easy to do, which is all about the monetization meta tag and detecting if someone is a paying subscriber from within JavaScript. And instead of waiting months for income reports, the micro amounts of money can be streamed directly to our wallets in real time. So how can we help that creativity, that creative developers to grow, to move to game development? How can we encourage them? How can we support them? Is web monetization the answer? Are there any options, any other options we can use to solve the problems? Let's discuss. Thanks.